Nobody expected this. The president of the Indiana Fever, who was sat at the top of the entire organization, finally spoke during the quiet section. Her comments caused a stir in the basketball music scene as a whole and raised eyebrows. Politics, music, and pressure.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for showing up this morning to officially welcome back Kelly Kroskoff as president of Basketball Business
Operation, the dynamics of the locker room, and the conflict between building a brand and a champion were all revealed for the first time. And once you hear the full story, everything you think you know about Caitlin Clark's situation in Indiana has changed. Now let's go back to the beginning of this story. Before Caitlin Clark ever wore a Hoosier uniform, Indiana was among the least well-known teams in professional basketball. There is talk about 6 wins in 2021, 5 in 2022, and 13 in 2023. For nearly 10 years, they were a joke. No fans, no buzz, no spotlight. No cameras would be present. There were not many people seated. The WNBA scene had drastically changed in spite of the Fever. That was the reality. A once proud franchise became little more than a footnote. But no one in that front office could have predicted what happened, no matter how hard they tried. Everything drastically altered when the first overall pick in the 2024 WNBA draft walked into the room. Caitlin Clark did more than just turn down the heat. She changed the league as a whole. Everywhere she gave a performance, the audiences were sold out. Record-breaking TV ratings, rapidly selling jerseys, and an unprecedented media frenzy in women's basketball since, well, music. In the middle of that explosion, the company had to make a choice. Would they try to ride the wave or try to modify its direction? That's when the whole story starts to get interesting. Because the front office took a stunning action when the Fever needed someone at the top who recognized exactly what they had. Women's sports are being independently transformed by a once-in-a-generation athlete. Kelly Kroskoff has been named president of basketball and business operations. On paper, it made logical. Kroskoff has first-hand experience with the Fever, having formed the team that won the 2012 championship. With all the anticipated enthusiasm, the group presented her. But something she said during the news conference raised issues that many at the moment decided to overlook, but which would later come back to ruin the entire business months later. Because the warning signs were hidden in plain sight, nobody saw them until it was too late. Everything broke down at this point. Caitlin Clark's injury in July 2025 has held her out of 11 games this season due to a groin issue that has been bothering her for weeks. Despite everything, the team is on the verge of making it to the playoffs, which has fans upset. The internet claims that there was something hidden in the October 2024 address that most people had missed. Kroskoff spoke directly to the cameras during the press conference, saying, "Yes, Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston are our foundational players, and we plan to keep adding to them, but I want the squad to be a national leader and a long-lasting brand like Apple." Those words did not convey that picture to many individuals. As a result, the movie went viral in a matter of hours. It was a warning. Such a response was unprecedented in the Fever front office. In addition to being furious, the fans were well-organized, noisy, and difficult to ignore. Because of what Apple actually accomplished, the comparison to Apple struck a different chord. The corporation was built on the vision of a single genius, Steve Jobs. And as soon as he departed, the empire nearly collapsed. As a result, supporters of Clark saw the Fever president's use of that same analogy as illuminating, as though they already saw Clark as an element rather than the main focus. On social media, a fan reacted to enduring brands that share their ideals. Apple is regarded with becoming a global icon thanks to Steve Jobs, the company's star and visionary. Another fan also didn't hold back. They say the Fever will admit that they lost the best opportunity in women's sports history when Clark finally decides she's had enough of a skip fire in the front office. The message boards, comment sections, and answers all conveyed the same general idea. You continue to focus on her and don't belittle the most important individual this team has ever had. The criticism wasn't just noise, it was a choice. And someone in that organization became aware of how serious the situation was getting. Because a few hours after the video became famous, Kroskoff's account abruptly vanished. Instead of a message or an explanation, there was silence where there had been a social media presence just a few days earlier. At this point, it gets much more complicated because, while the front crew was being blasted online, the players on the court, the ones who really stood up next to Caitlin Clark every night, were giving a completely different and far more truthful story. One of Clark's best friends, Lexi Hull, had nothing when she applied for a Glamour magazine profile. Hull claimed that everyone in the league already knew that hardly nobody in a Fever uniform had previously been prepared to reveal. I think there is some jealousy about the Fever because of the media exposure and the people who have helped us since Caitlin arrived. She went one step further and revealed that teams from all across the league had been openly discussing issues such as, "We can't let the Fever win in their own locker rooms." Hull's comments exposed a troubling reality that had been emerging for 2 seasons. The Fever does more than just play hoops these days. Because of the players on their team, opposing teams have picked them out every time they on the floor. And not because of the performance of the team, but because of one individual. Sophie Cunningham took it a step farther. The player who made it clear early on that taking cheap shots at her teammate would have repercussions and established herself as Clark's enforcer on the floor had already come forward and confirmed what the entire league had been speculating about. "Before I joined Indiana, Cunningham said I heard it." While she was still in Phoenix, she stated that there were explicit conversations about Clark in the locker room and that competitors were trying to make their point in addition to winning. Throughout the season, the narrative of Clark being physically targeted and getting an endless welcome to the W moment has been documented. The physical play intended against Clark was so intense that even impartial spectators were taken aback. And by the time her season ended after just 13 games due to a groin injury, many were legitimately wondering if the officiating had sufficiently protected her. A rising proportion of attentive listeners stated that the answer was no. But that was just the beginning. In a September 2024 podcast, Hall of Famer Cheryl Swoop claimed that significant Fever participants were subtly expressing their disinterest in attending. The inside story of what it's really like to be Caitlin Clark's co-worker was starting to emerge because everything was in the public eye. It was also not what the critics had anticipated. Caitlin Clark's detractors have mostly promoted a straightforward story that she caused problems in the restroom and that the players disliked her. That the situation surrounding Clark was too much for them to handle. It spread swiftly. Either it was broadcast everywhere, or it was part of the background hum of the conflict that accompanied the Fever into their second season together. Unless, of course, Subbard and Diana Taurasi made Clark appear as a guest on another March Madness show. She confronted it directly. She wasn't angry. She didn't behave defensively. She was remarkably calm about it. You basically become used to people thinking they know what happens behind closed doors when, in reality, they don't. Her co-workers in that locker room continued to support her. After Clark recovered from her injuries, her teammates filled the floor during the 2025 playoffs. After the game, they concluded her interview. They showed up for her out of the blue. When the Fever won the Commissioner Cup, there was much celebration in the locker room. Laughing and genuinely happy for one another, players connected in a way that didn't feel like an act. This hasn't been put together by the media yet. The Fever tale never revolved around whether or not Caitlin Clark's teammates liked her. The question was whether the front office, which oversaw them all, was ready to surround her with the necessary components and devote all of their attention to the project. Lexi Hull initially cautious, but Boston and Clark became close due to their real relationships on the court. Aaliyah, Sophie Cunningham and other new players were smitten with Clark before they had ever played a game together. Michaela Timpson, the rookie who made the final squad, showed Clark a level of respect that is hard to match. Clark made remarks for 2 of her teammates on Instagram after the expansion draft, stating things like, "Cub I love you," for Christy Wallace and "My Aussie for life," for Chloe BBY. It was genuine love. These were real relationships. But it takes more than contacts to win titles. And that tension was at the heart of it all. Apart from the Apple soundbite, Kelly Kroskop said something at the October 2024 press conference that many people missed in their rush to voice their disapproval. When Krokop said she wanted the Fever to be a long-lasting brand, she was alluding to the long game. Caitlin Clark said she was 10 years old when Indiana won its only championship in 2012, claiming that sometimes progress requires a generation. Maybe the group had been working for someone else all along, planting the seeds for a 10-year-old somewhere who would be inspired by what the Fever was doing at the time. You may perceive that as either vision or deceit, depending on how you understand the front office's true priorities. But this is undeniable. A company started prohibiting supporters from going to the Fever in 2024. They came because of a player. They drove for hours at a time. They were given money that the WNBA had never seen before. The number of spectators exceeded the league's expectations. Additionally, when Clark's ailments kept him from performing in ways that could be measured, documented, and publicly recognized, ticket sales declined. TV watching decreased. The harsh reality of what Clark represented to that franchise could not be denied. One particularly notable statement made by Kroskopf during that press conference was, "If you are an intelligent basketball player and you observe Caitlin Clark's style of play, you might want to play alongside her." The Fever's recruiting prowess had subtly developed into one of the WNBA's most compelling stories, even though she was undoubtedly unaware of it at the time. The chance to play alongside Clark was the deciding factor for veterans. Crowded stadiums weren't the only places where Clark's fan base existed. Because of the environment it was creating, players wanted to be a part of something bigger than a normal WNBA season. Despite this, the Fever has emerged as one of the league's most popular destinations. Not because of a brand strategy, but rather because of a basketball player who enhanced everyone around her and packed buildings wherever she went. In 2026 and beyond, we'll see what the Fever achieves. The franchise lost 2 players to Portland in the WNBA expansion draft, Chris and Chloe BBY.